Hello everyone, Flame of Fantasy from Holistic Songwriting. How's it going? Hopefully you're having a great Sunday. Easter Sunday, that is. Wow, I totally forgot it's Easter today. How's it going with you guys? Welcome to this live Q&A extraordinaire on a Sunday instead of a Monday. Yeah, so my laptop is kind of slow, which is why that just looked like Parkinson's animated that. So, guys, tomorrow I won't be here, which means I'm gonna do the live Q&A a little bit early before I get it into my weekend. I thought I'd do this for you guys because, yeah, tomorrow's not gonna work. Gepar says, Happy Easter, right back at you, my friend. So, it's been a crazy week, a very busy week. I'm not gonna lie. The artist series was work up until the very last second and several hours after that. And it's been Skype sessions since then and other stuff, recording more videos today. It's been really crazy. It's been a really crazy week. And I'm super glad. So right now it's almost 11 p.m. here in Germany. And now my weekend begins. So yes, I'm good with that. So that means I have like three more hours of weekend that I'm really going to enjoy. The first of which starts now. So, wow, awesome, dude. Super cool to hear that. The Matster 105 says, Love the Nirvana episode. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, man. That really means a lot because a lot of work goes into it. And so far, from what I've seen, it's gone over really well. Same as the Radiohead episode. So, super happy that you guys like it because it really is a crazy amount of work. Every time I make one of these episodes, I'm like, just why? Why did I agree to do this? And I remind myself that this is actually something that I love doing, and it is something I love doing. But there's always a part of it where I go like, oh man, there's still so much work to do, and so much of it, unfortunately, isn't really that much fun. But anyways, Ethan says, will you do an artist series on Linkin Park? Well, a lot of people have been asking about them, so maybe. Yeah, it's. I would say the chances are good. I would say the chances right now are at about like 70%. A few more people call in and say, or like write comments saying like, we want Linkin Park. I mean, I can't help it. I have to make an episode of Linkin Park. And on top of that, I'm a fan, so that would be a fun episode to make for sure. All right, we're jumping right into the questions. Yeah, Thomas, I changed the stream date just for today because tomorrow I won't be here. I'm meeting an old friend in the Netherlands, which means I'll be there all day pretty much, so I won't be doing this tomorrow. All right, Owen Severance says, hey, I noticed that most pop songs are about relationships. I'm wondering how I write a love song without being cheesy. Now, that's a good question. And it's something that I've thought about quite a bit, actually, because, well, as a songwriter, you have to start writing some love songs. It's just like the most natural thing. It's the first thing I would think about when I'm writing a song that's kind of poppy. First thing I think is like, it's going to be a love song. I don't even really think about that anymore, to be honest. I mean, there's some songs that don't turn out as love songs, but those typically come from like when I have a strong idea in the beginning. But anything else, where I have the music or I have something musical to start with, typically like one of the first things I'll do is just write something love song-ish. So how do you keep it interesting? Well, I think the trick is to find, so you write a love song, but you try to find a twist to the whole genre. I personally like dark twists, so even if it's like a metaphor, looking at "Can't Feel My Face" by The Weeknd, which takes love and compares it to drugs. It's kind of an old idea, but I think he does it pretty well. Or him and his team do it pretty well. Something like that, where you have an interesting metaphor for love, or dark metaphors are really cool, especially because I think if you take something that's generally regarded as very beautiful and this really positive thing and turn it into something negative and dark, you have all these contrasts and light and shadow. It's just this, archetypical beautiful thing in art in general, I think. So that's a really cool way to do it. You could also see it through the eyes of someone else. Maybe you tell a love story between two unlikely characters, and this sounds like a rom-com, but what I mean by that would be maybe historic figures, or maybe it's think outside of the box. Maybe it's a love song from, I don't know, to someone and his cat or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that obvious, but I don't. That's maybe a silly example, but I'm sure it would be possible to like changing the perspective, changing the time in which your song is set. Maybe it's a song that is set in like the 1980s or something like that, and you add in all of these, heavy metal kind of elements into the music. I'm just riffing here, but it's like that's kind of what I'm thinking when I'm thinking of lyrics and I'm trying to come up with something original. I'm just always thinking through like what am I interested in? Like for example, what kind of hobbies do I have, and how can I turn that into a love song? So for example, I wrote a song about that was a love song that had like metaphors where everything was music. So it used words like strike a chord and in harmony and stuff like that. Where it used all of those words, and it was kind of these puns that used all these words. You could do stuff. You could even do it in a funny way. You could say something like, I'm a dominant guy, but you're the tonic I come home to. That's a terrible line. Don't use that. But maybe you could. It would be a funny line if you're doing comedy or something like that. But see what I mean? You take a subject and you just turn it into a love song. You say like, okay, what would this look like as a love song? Um, and I was just thinking like, yeah, I'm a big board gamer, so I was thinking like, oh yeah, you couldn't probably do this with board games because games aren't really cool. But then I thought about what's it called, Shape of My Heart, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess someone can do it. All right, God bless YouTube notifications. Very true. Cool. Thanks, man. I'm actually here to stream for once. Well, Ethan, good on you. Yeah, I thought so. That on Monday it's maybe not the best time for everyone, so I'm doing this now as well. That was another reason for doing that. Okay, Ahmed, I'm trying to understand your question. Can I write only sensational songs like the Ed Sheeran and non-sexist songs of The Weeknd like The Hills? Can I sing with mic only like Weeknd and with guitar in a song like Ed? Ahmed, I'm afraid I don't understand your question. Could you maybe rephrase that again? Sorry. Caleb says, what are your thoughts on Elvis as a musician, and what do you think artists today can learn from him that still applies today? Oh, that's a difficult question. I gotta be honest, I never listened to much Elvis. What I heard, I did like very much, but it just never, I just never really listened to him that much. Obviously, he's been a huge inspiration on modern pop culture, and everything he did was, really brought pop music forward, and he was very daring. He brought, to a part, he brought sexuality into pop music. So, I mean, obviously, he's one of the greats. There's no question about that. I just personally haven't really listened to a lot of Elvis or much music from that time period, I think, actually. Mostly jazz, I think. Not that much Elvis, to be honest. So, yeah. But obviously, he's a fantastic, huge personality. What's the Matster 105 says, what's your philosophy on the idea of creating a sound for yourself? Well, I think it has a lot to do with being able to cope with negative feedback of people. The people that I know that don't have a sound of their own typically listen too much to other people, and they're too afraid to hurt someone's feelings or to write something that isn't universally liked. I think the people who are true artists, and by that I mean people who really have a sound of their own, who really cut out a niche for themselves, typically are people that are very weird, you would say. So the people I find, like the people I know here in Germany that have found their own sound, I've noticed generally dress weird. They have weird haircuts. They talk weird. And by weird, I don't mean that in a negative way. It sounds derogative when I say it like that. I mean just different. They're out of the ordinary. They're extraordinary. And you can tell immediately that they're musicians or artists. And so they, like, I mean, the artists that I know, for example, some guys like to wear these just hideous clothes, hideous, and I love it. Like I totally, I'm going crazy for that kind of stuff. I would never wear something like that. And they have like the shittiest haircuts, like bangs for guys. I think just look horrible, and just like shaved in all the wrong places. Um, but you can immediately tell that this is an artist, someone who knows what they want, and they don't care about what you think. And immediately, I'm drawn to them. Immediately, I want to know what kind of music they would make with that attitude. You know, one of my favorite comedians is Ricky Gervais, and mostly for the reason because he says, "I don't care. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just going to do my thing anyways. You know, I don't care if I offend anyone. It's not meant like that. So I'm just going to do what I want." And I think that's what draws me to him because he doesn't care. He literally his comedy is just he says what he wants, and I mean he's very responsible with what he says at the same time, even though you wouldn't think that at all times. But um, he is just out there. He says what he wants, and that to me is a true artist, someone who doesn't care what others think. And I think that's the core principle. If you can really understand that not everyone has to love you, not everyone has to like you even. A lot of people actually should hate you. If you're in that position, I think then you're doing something right as an artist, and then you've probably found your sound. Because you have to crack a few eggs to find your own sound. That's a weird mix of metaphors, but I know you understand what I mean. It's a really good question, and it's something I'm definitely going to talk more about on the channel. It's a really, really important question. All right, the Matster. One more question, really quickly, because I've already read one of your questions. I'm writing, recording, and producing a concept album right now, and so far the songs go from synth pop, hip hop, to Bon Iver style acoustic ballads. Changes between songs will H. Do you think those drastic changes will hurt me commercially? Um, it depends on how you do it. I mean, Ed Sheeran managed to sneak in some hip hop into his folk songs, and even had like some songs that had synths in them. It really depends on how you how you do it. So I couldn't really say. From yeah, it's possible. I really couldn't say. It has to have the same emotion. I think that is often more important than the actual sounds that we use, even though that helps to find one sound. But the emotion, the atmosphere has to be generally, not even generally, like pretty much the same for your songs. Otherwise, and here's the thing why that is important. I mean, if you find a song on YouTube, right, and you like it, you're like, wow, this is the coolest song I've ever heard. I want to hear more of what this band has done. And you click on another song in the description or whatever, and it's just really different. And you're like, yeah, but I don't care for this. I don't like X. You know, I like the first one because that was Y, and I love Y. But X, come on, I don't know. Like everyone's doing X right now. So generally, that is how I feel about kind of finding your niche, finding something that has the same message, that kind of speaks to the same people at least. You know what I mean? Like hip hop and folk fans, I think like if you're really going for the core, for the hardcore hip hop and hardcore folk fans, are dramatically different people. So I don't know if you're going to find an audience for that. All right. Ethan Connor says, how do you write a good bass line for a rock song? I always end up making the bass line just the same as the guitar, which is boring. I don't think it is boring. I think it's sometimes just serving the song the best. I use a lot of just doubling the bass, the guitar. It's really that is, I would say, probably 70 to 80% of my rock guitar writing, of my bass guitar writing. It's just doubling the guitar an octave lower. Sometimes I'll do something like playing the fifth of the chord, but that's rare. Typically, it's just doubling the bass, the bass of the guitar. The only times when I'll escape that is when there's really a moment where the only instrument that we hear is the guitar, the bass guitar. Maybe the guitar is adding like some high notes to it, but the main guitar part isn't chords. In that case, I might have something more melodical being played in the bass. But typically, then the section that I'm writing will start with the bass. It's not something I write after the fact. It's not something where I have already an entire arrangement. I'm like, okay, what could I do with the bass? Let's find a bass line for that. typically that's those sections start with the bass line and they are built around that. Thinking of like all these indie rock bands that have um, like these really distorted bass guitars and stuff like that, where that becomes like a real riff in and of itself, almost like a guitar. But that's kind of how I handle it. I mean, if you're talking about folk, it's a different story, but you're talking about rock. So, um, yeah, that's kind of how I handle it. It's really not that difficult, and doubling the bass of the guitar is totally fine. Um, Again, the bass is, in most cases, is a supportive instrument that locks together the guitars with the drums, and that's kind of the function of them. So anything else you're doing, I think, can get confusing. So I stick to the basics a lot of times. And I'd rather have an interesting guitar riff that the bass can follow as well. You know what I mean? All right. Keenan says, been busy with exams and missed so many streams. Well, you're back. All right, it jumped. Sorry. Owen Severance says, working on recording my songs right now. Do you recommend recording at home or in an actual studio? Also, should I release a full album when I'm first starting out or just a single? First a single. If you're releasing a full album, you're giving away all of your stuff is out there, and you're not going to find a lot of people. Let me tell you that. With your first stuff that you're releasing, almost no one is going to listen to it. I mean, you can be smart about it, and the way to do it is release a song every once in a while and grow your fan base with every song. If you just release your album, then what's your long-term plan? Your long-term plan is maybe going on tour and then eventually releasing another album. But if you release song by song, yeah, you can stretch that out over months if you want to. You know, you can release a song per month and do that for 12 months, for a whole year, and then you write your next album, or then you go on tour or whatever. So for me, it's a clear answer. Go with a single, and whether as for recording at home or in an actual studio, it depends on what your budget allows. Obviously, if you record in a studio, you will have people that know how to use all the gear there, and they will help you get the best sound out of your guitar, out of you. So that is worth the money as far as I'm concerned. But if it's your first record that you're ever making and you just want to try it out, I'm also I'm also going to allow you to record it at home. You know, um, no one's telling you not to. I mean, I personally record most of my stuff here, but if I wanted to have like a really big production, I might still go into a studio. So, you know, you have to decide for yourself whether the money's worth it for you. I think if you have professionals working on your side and putting up the microphones in the right way, and people who really know how to do that, recording engineers who know what they're doing, and maybe a producer who also knows what they're doing, that's definitely worth the money. I think the people are really worth the money, not so much the room maybe. The room, I've heard plenty of great rock albums, or are you working on a rock album? I don't think you said. Uh, Plenty of people who wrote great sounding indie and rock albums and folk albums that they recorded at home and it sounded great. But what's really important is to have the right people there who know how to get the best sound out of you and get the best song out of you, you know? Caleb says, I feel that I worry too much about originality and being original. Is it possible that if I just keep writing and evolving, that I will stumble upon my own style? I think it's actually the only way to find your style is by stumbling upon it. You really just have to write a lot of music, I think. It's there is I think the sound in itself, that word, I think is overused and misunderstood in a lot of ways in pop culture, or a lot of people misunderstand that word, I think. I think sound relates way more to your process, the way you create your song, than it does to the actual sound that you have in the end. So, for example, if everyone records their songs a certain way, maybe your style is of recording them a different way or writing them a different way. Maybe your style is of throwing a dice, and whatever number pops up, that's the chord that you're going to use. So if it's a 6, you're going to play an A minor if you're in C or something like that. You know, maybe that's your approach. And I think that can dictate much more what your song will actually sound like than, say, you know, only using diminished chords in your songs. I don't know. I'm just saying something right now. So the process, I find, really is where it's at when it comes to your song. Whether you write it, if you write a song on your piano, or with a friend on his ukulele and you're just singing and you're not even playing an instrument while you're writing the album, or if you're writing it over Skype, or if you're writing it on the back of your shopping list or something like that. The song that's going to come out of that is going to be drastically different because the approach, the method that lies behind it is different every time. So I would say focus on your process, focus on that, and think about how can I do this? How should I go about this? And think more about that and then like what kind of chords you're using and that kind of thing. Really think about your process. Like how do I come up with my ideas? How do I turn it into a finished song? Like what is the actual process that I go through? Ahmed clarifies his question. Never mind, I love songs that are meaningful, something like the Weekend songs, but I don't like very sexual songs. If you compare Starboy or The Hills, not very sexual, to something like Often, read below also, please. I also love sensational, meaningful songs like Thinking Out Loud, Ed Sheeran. I want to do both, talk about sex, drugs, religion as Weekend, and love like Ed. Can someone be that mix? Um, Yeah, I think so. I mean, The Weeknd does that kind of, right? He had some more, well, his romantic songs are really like sexual romantic in that way. I think it's possible. There have been artists that have done that in the past. I'm trying to think of one right now, but there's plenty of artists that have done both very sexual and love songs. Like thinking of Justin Timberlake, for example, who has done both. You know, in the '90s, it was more about like, I'm gonna put a baby inside you, and now it's more like, eat your ass like a birthday cake, eat your ass like a birthday cake. So, stupid example, I know, but you can do both, and both can be very successful, I think. So since there is a huge market for both styles, I think it's more about, and again, this comes back to, I think the market is more for the music and less for the lyrics, to be honest. So I don't think people really care whether you're singing about sex or love. I think they care more about the way you sing it and the way you put it into music. Caleb says, I absolutely love your songwriting books. Well, glad to hear that. Is there any modern songwriting books or books about the modern industry that you can recommend? Man, I'm reading one right now that I think is just absolutely incredible. It is the book I wanted to write. I would have written if I ever, or I would have liked to write. If I ever would write a book about marketing yourself as a musician, this would be it. And it's called Get More Fans. It's incredible. It's, in my opinion, it's the new Bible for people who want to market themselves as musicians, and I highly, highly recommend it. Other than that, there's not a lot of songwriting books that I really like, which is the Addiction Formula actually came out of a frustration that I didn't find any songwriting books that I really loved. There's one, Songwriting for Dummies, which I thought was pretty good. The title, forget the title, but the book was actually pretty good. And there's Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattison, which is just kind of the standard thing that everyone talks about. It's good. It's a little bit old-fashioned, but it's good, and it gets you thinking about things that you otherwise probably wouldn't think about. Although you could also say that maybe you don't really need to think about those things because, in all honesty, are they really still that important in modern pop music? But still, a fun, enjoyable read. But man, Get More Fans is definitely highly recommend that book. I just so far, I mean, my girlfriend has it and she's in China right now. She took it with her. I only read the first 20, 30, 40 pages maybe, and I was just nodding so hard. I was like, yes, this is it exactly. This is what I've been saying all this time. Exactly. They just get it. They understand how the market works today. Because there's still so many business books out there that are just so old-fashioned and they just don't understand how it works. And so many musicians, I'm telling the same stuff to musicians all day, and there's so much so much talk about just explaining to people how the industry works, and they just don't want to realize that that's how it works today. That book, and even if you just read the first 40, 50 pages, to just understand how the industry works these days, I mean, it's worth the price of the book as far as I'm concerned. Keenan says, what's your preferred or favorite key to write in? I prefer F minor to G sharp minor. I think my favorite key, honestly, just probably A minor. I know that's a really dumb answer, but it's just like it's the easiest. So, and I don't really care about keys. Um, that's the one I write in most often, just because on piano it's the easiest to play, and I'm not a good pianist. On guitar, probably A minor as well, honestly. Um, and you know, it might always happen that later for the singer we might transpose it to another key. So I don't really care about the key because it might change eventually anyway. So yeah. Ethan Connor says, every time I come up with a part for a song, for example, a guitar riff, I feel like I've heard it somewhere else before. It feels like I'm copying someone else. Well, welcome to songwriting. That's how it is, man. Um, there is everything out there already. There isn't anything anymore that people haven't written yet. So you're late to the party. That's just how it is. And you have to understand that when you're going in. And don't worry about it too much. If you're really copying someone, if you're really stealing it from someone, that's something I would advise you not to do. Not just for, you know, copyright reasons, but also just because ethically and all of that. But man, everything I write, I've stolen from somewhere. The idea I've stolen from somewhere. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to write a bass riff like in that song, something that has that same kind of energy. And maybe in the end, the guitar plays it, or maybe it's played by a synth. You know, that might change over the course of the writing session. But I'm not gonna say like, no, I'm not gonna write that because someone else has already done it. I'm just gonna say like, you know what? I'm just gonna start. The thing is, so much of a song really depends on how you execute it, and much more so than the idea. Sure, the idea is important, but the execution is 80% of it, I would say. And so even if I were to steal a riff from someone, the way I would execute it would be so different from the way they execute it. And that's what makes me an artist, I think, is that it would be so different, that I have my own way of doing things, that no one would recognize it anymore. And I could literally show some parts of my songs to people and say like, look, this is actually stolen from that. And they would say like, really? Like I could literally show it side by side and they wouldn't get it. I'm sure I've done that before actually. And because that's just like, I hear that one voicing in that one chord, and I'm like, yeah, I stole that from this. But no one else is going to hear that because, first of all, they might not even know that song, and even if they did, why would they care about that chord? You know, maybe I love that chord, but no one else does. But you know, I stole that idea from it. So don't beat yourself up about it too much. It's just how it is. And again, the way it's not about the idea; it's about how you execute it, how you put it together in a song. You could steal a rock riff from Metallica, but if you turn it into a folk song in the end and play it on an acoustic guitar, no one's gonna care. See? So you're good. Colin Farrell says, man, I love that name. Great actor. How do I write a good bass line? Sounds like a great me versus the internet topic. In my entirely objective, unbiased opinion as a bassist. Huh. How do I write a good bass line? Interesting. Maybe. You know, maybe not a bad idea. I've already kind of uh, pre-planned the next couple of episodes, but it's a good one. I should think about that. Thomas, did I skip your question? I'm sorry. Where is your question? Should I be aware of the pop market as a pop songwriter, meaning writing a song that sounds relevant to the times versus out of season? Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? So I am personally of the conviction that no, you should just write whatever you think is best. You should write in your preferred style. But I have a lot of colleagues, and by a lot of colleagues, I think it's all of them. I can't think of any that don't think like this. They really are obsessed with what's going on in the market, especially sound. Like they're like, oh, listen to that synthesizer sound. We got to write something like that. And if I show up with like a sawtooth or something like that, a simple sawtooth that I like, they're like, no, this isn't modern enough. And it really is. It really is. It's kind of depressing when you go somewhere and you have like a really cool song, and I don't really care about the sounds that much, to be honest. Or yeah, and someone says like, yeah, they don't care about the song. It's just about the sound for them. Um, I think the answer really depends on a choice that you have to make. you're either going to be an opportunist or an artist. And if you want to make a living, it's definitely easier as an opportunist. But if you want to go down in history, it's definitely easier as an artist. But it's also a lot easier as to um, live off of welfare as an artist. So you have to be very conscious of that. There's a few people in this world who manage to survive as an artist and thrive, like maybe Brian Eno comes to mind. But there's a lot more people. Those are typically the unsung heroes in the background, people that write great songs for other people or that just do really great work every single day. And these kind of people just typically follow the market more and they kind of do what everyone else is doing because that is in. That's what people are want right now. There was a big discussion here in Germany a few months ago. This big German TV channel had done like a comedy bit on, it wasn't really a comedy bit, they were just really telling the truth, to be honest, about how a very few people here in Germany write all the big hit songs. And how it's like it's all a lie, and these artists who pretend like they're these really authentic characters don't really write their own songs, blah, 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 blah. And they all sound the same. It's always the same subjects. It's only 5 subjects, and you could write an entire song out of just 5 words, and they all sound like that song. And that's all true. But I talked to some industries professionals here in Germany, and they said, yeah, well, duh. I mean, that's what people want to hear. It's not like we write this because that's what whatever. We write this because that's what people want to hear. If you write this, I mean, we have to make a living somehow, right? If I only write songs that I want to write, then, in 5 years, I'm going to be living off of welfare. So there's that way of viewing it, and then there's the other way of saying, like, you know what, I'm fine with living off of welfare, but someday I might have a break. It's, uh, if you're going to go for the safe route or the dangerous one, and the other one is definitely dangerous, so be very careful about that. But if you have an interesting image, and people, and if there are some people who love what you're doing, if you are an artist, so if you have that very niche kind of market, then I think you should just do whatever you want to do. But if what you're doing, if you're not finding an audience, and if your stuff is very niche, then you might want to think about broadening out a little bit, or adding some more popular stuff into the mix. That was a very long-winded answer. Sorry. Caleb says, getting the book right now. Thank you so much for your answers today. Sure. Thank you so much. Shay SQ says, what do you think of the state of modern R&B? Well, I mean, it's all a wash today, isn't it? Like, it's so blended with other styles. I mean, I'm thinking of, there's only very few real R&B artists left. So typically what we have as R&B now is stuff like Jhené Aiko, which is already a couple of years old, right? That's already like, what is that, 3 or 4 years old? Jesus, man, I'm getting old. Not getting old. Everyone's getting old. And there's the new Timberlake album, and, well, there's Gallant, which I think is a really interesting artist. Gallant is Gallant. He has some really interesting songs, I think. So to me, that is very interesting. But it all revolves around, as do all commercial genres, about the production more than about the actual writing. There's some fantastic singers out there. There's no question about that. Still, people think it's all autotune, and everything is autotune, but that doesn't mean that these singers can't sing. So I think it's just going through changes. Stuff is happening right now. It's all the production, the sound is super, super important. I'm a big R&B fan, so I'll keep listening to it. Yeah, I mean, it's just changing. I'm fine with this new style, to be honest. I really like it. Cool, guys. I'm gonna answer, let's say, 3 more questions. So if you guys have a few more questions, I'm down for that. Otherwise, I'm gonna call it quits because I'm getting really tired, unfortunately. So let's see. I'm just waiting for your guys' questions. Let me know if there's anything else you want to know about. Otherwise, I was listening to old R&B and noticed how far the vocals have come, says Thomas Wolfe. Well, make no mistakes. I mean, make no mistake. These old artists are fantastic singers as well. It's just that today we have way more possibilities to, you know, massage these vocals into something that sounds perfect. I'm not just talking about autotune, but stretching and you know, doing so many more takes. I think that's probably the biggest one. You can do 200 takes of a single line if you want to. That wasn't possible in the olden days when you just had tape machines. Um, so there's just way more. It's just way easier to make a great sounding vocal these days. Um, that being said, though, there's a couple of artists out there that I think are just incredible. Like they have incredible voices. Like, I mean, thinking of Beyonce and several like vocal harmony bands. It's just incredible. Some of these people, just it's absolutely intense, absolutely insane. Um, Give me 1 second. I have to plug in my laptop here. It's gonna go dead in a few seconds. There we go. All right. Can you describe the Billboard sound right now? Says Anderson the Fourth. Oh Jesus, man, that's a difficult one. I actually haven't been listening to much Billboards lately. I've just really been focusing on the YouTube stuff right now. Um, I mean, last time I checked, no, I don't think it's changed that much, probably. It's very crass. Like a lot of it is just very crass music, and I don't mean that in a necessarily bad way. I think that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. These are artists in a weird way, maybe. For in the traditional sense, you wouldn't probably call them artists, but these are people who very much find a niche market. A lot of what we hear in the charts isn't. I mean, there's still like the vanilla kind of songs, stuff that everyone likes, but there's also a lot of niche stuff, a lot of really aggressive, very violent, very sexual stuff that you wouldn't expect that a lot of people like that kind of stuff. But it is in the charts. And I think it just goes to show how niche songs these days have it easier and easier with the internet because they can find their audience much, much quicker than they used to. Ryan Lee says, have you listened to Coop? You probably mean K-pop, right? They do a lot of interesting things, not in American pop. I've only listened to a little bit of it, and it was interesting. It's just not something I'm really focusing on with holistic songwriting, so I'm not listening to a lot of K-pop. I actually I've been going back. I've been a little bit sentimental lately. I've been listening to a lot of rock of the '90s and early 2000s lately, and I'm having a really good time listening to this one band called Lo-Pro. That's Lo-Pro. And they have an album, something with revenge, the sweet sound of revenge, or something like that. And it's weird because I don't think the writing is that great, and I don't think the band is that great. I don't love the singer's voice, but somehow these songs just stick hard, and I'm humming them all day, and I really love them, and I keep listening to them over and over again. There's a few songs like Pushed Aside and Texas that really, really got into my head, and I just can't stop listening to them for some reason. It's really funny. All right, one last question by Thomas Wolfe. What's the best way to create a sustainable career in pop as an artist/songwriter? Watch the video that I did last week, my last Q&A, if you haven't seen that yet, where I talked to Jens Hilzensauer. He's really an expert at that kind of stuff. He really helps people make a living in this industry, and he really knows what he's talking about. And last week we talked about a lot of really great things. So that would be what I recommend. That's the first step. And also in terms of mindset, the mindset really is the crucial thing. As I said, like get that book, get more fans, and read the first few pages. That's the mindset that you need today, and I truly believe that. It's not a foot in the door, competitive, that is so 1990s, 1980s maybe. It just doesn't fly anymore. With the internet, everyone's nice. Everyone has to be nice, and you have to have good intentions. You have to have a good goal. Your message has to be on point. Those kind of things are way more important than ever. Socially, the social aspect is huge. What I'm doing right now with you guys, that part of it is so important. I'm having a personal conversation with you guys is so much stronger than just making videos on YouTube. So I see this as an integral part of my marketing as well. Right, but watch that video, buy that book. I couldn't recommend it highly enough. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I totally forgot to say one thing, and that is timestamps. If anyone would care to go through all of this again, probably not. No one's going to do that. I should have said that at the beginning of the video, shouldn't I? Go through all of this and do timestamps for everything. Like just write down the question with the timestamps. That would be so awesome. I should say that in front of every video now. And I wanted to. Just totally forgot. Guys, it was lovely talking to you, and I shall see you soon. A new video coming out on Wednesday, as always. In case you haven't noticed, new videos are now coming out every Wednesday and Saturday, and every Monday I'm doing this live Q&A. Just not tomorrow, because I'm doing it today instead. Thank you so much for watching. Really enjoyed it. And auf Wiedersehen und danke, says Kanan Ortiz. Same to you. Thank you so much.